You are perfectly safe in your bunker. You have plenty of food and water and even plumbing. The problem is that you are alone and there is a zombie outside. Out of sheer boredom, you teach it to speak, and now it's trying to convince you to let it in. Dave heard the chime of the intercom over the bunker's speakers and groaned. "Dav!" called the gravelly voice, muffled slightly as it rolled out of the old overhead speaker. The speaker itself was embedded in the concrete ceiling under a metal plate that had been bolted into place. The bolts had proved problematic, and the metal extremely resistant to all attempts to remove or break. Another chime. "Dave!" He tried to ignore it and focus on the task at hand, removing the darn intercom speaker from his sleeping quarters. He stood on top of 2 chairs stacked on a desk while using an old gigantic screwdriver and hammer to chisel around the metal plate. Over the past 3 days, he'd made substantial progress. In another couple of hours, he'd have a large enough gap to wedge a pre-bar under the platey. "Dave!" He began pounding the screwdriver with the hammer even harder, trying to drown out the voice. It wasn't working. "Davey!" Dave let out a loud, exasperated sigh and turned on the radio clipped to his faded jacket. "Yes, Z, I hear you. What is it?" he said, not bothering to disguise his annoyance. "Open." "No." "Brains." "No." "Dave." Dave stopped pounding at the plate for a moment to press his head into the back of his knuckles. It had been his bright idea to teach the zombie at the front gate to talk. He even gave it a name once it understood enough. Now he regretted the action with every fiber of his being. It had been a game at first, something to do during the long, lonesome months he'd spent in the bunker. He figured having someone to talk to might keep him sane a little longer. Now he was worried his insanity would stem from an entirely different and much more annoying source. He went back to his slow chiseling. After a few minutes, the intercom chimed again. "Noise?" questioned Z. Dave stopped and wiped sweat off his forehead. "You hear a noise?" "What noise?" asked Dave, worrying that something was compromising the bass. "Your noise. Loud metal and rock," replied Z. Dave looked down at his makeshift chisel and realized Z could hear him hammering over the intercom. "That's me," he said back. "I'm doing some quality-of-life renovations. You know, replacing the tile in the kitchen, putting in granite countertops, knocking down that annoying living room wall for an open-concept living space." He smiled as he kept talking, enjoying the fantasy. "Open wall?" Z asked. "Which wall? Z, enter." Dave winced. He should have seen that coming. "Never mind, dead guy," Dave began. "Never mind, it was just a joke. I'm trying to take out the intercom speaker in my bedroom." "Speaker box?" Z clarified. Dave nodded, even though no one could see him. He knew he did little things like that. Old physical habits from before the infection that he couldn't kick. "Yep, speaker box," he agreed. "That way you can't wake me up at night." Z was quiet for a long moment. These pauses in their conversations were new things. He used to always jump from one question to another, but over the past few weeks he'd learned to reflect. Dave thought that was extraordinary. For a zombie to take a few seconds to plan a response was so human. Night's bad, night talk make night good. Dave looked down at the radio thoughtfully. This also was not the first time Z had seemed just as lonely as he was. "Yeah, I get ya," said Dave, his tone softening. "But I got to sleep at night. Recharge the old noggin." "So, no night talk make brain good?" reasoned Z slowly. "Exactly. It's good for my brain." Brains?" replied Z, the hunger evident. Dave sighed. "Listen, dead guy. Just because I'm keeping my brain healthy doesn't mean—" But before he could finish, Dave accidentally kicked the chair he was standing on, and it began sliding off the desk. Dave tried to step off the falling chair, but missed and fell with it. He threw out his arm to brace his fall and felt pain shoot up the arm when it struck the floor. He yelled out. "Dave!" called Z. "Dave, okay?" Dave rolled onto his back and held his arm tight against his chest. He lay there for almost a minute, all the while listening to the zombie repeat his name over and over. "Dave, Dave, 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 Dave." "I'm fine. Jesus, just relax for a minute," he finally shouted back, feeling tears form at the corner of his eyes. He moved his arm around and began lightly pressing where it had hit the ground. It did not feel broken, although it throbbed like crazy. "Dave, okay?" Z asked immediately. "Yes," he replied, letting out a deep breath as the pain began to recede. "I'm okay." Z paused for a few seconds before asking, "Dave, brain okay?" Dave sighed, heavily. "Yes, Dave brain okay too? Good, said Z. Dave rolled his eyes and wondered if he was imagining the tone of relief in Z's voice. Dave? It asked. Yeah? Open? No.